Okay, friends. So, welcome to the human respiratory system, part 2. So, that is breathing and exchange of gases as per CBSE. And as per state, it is chapter number 8, respiration. So, earlier we have discussed about a human respiratory system, its functions and mechanism of a breathing. Now, today we'll discuss the exchange of gases. Alveoli are a site of gaseous exchange. So, gases like oxygen or carbon dioxide are exchanged by a diffusion based on their pressure or the concentration gradient. The major factors that affect the rate of diffusion: thickness of the membrane, that is around 0.2 millimeter, and solubility of gases. We know that CO2 is more soluble than oxygen. And the factors favorable for the oxygen from alveoli into the blood and carbon dioxide from blood into the alveoli. So this is how the exchange of gases takes place. If you see here, this is the alveoli, and here you will get a blood capillary. So diffusion of oxygen takes place from alveoli to blood capillary, and CO2 from blood capillary to the alveoli. Now, if you see this chart, respiratory gas oxygen in atmospheric air, it is around 159 millimeter of mercury, but in alveoli, it will come only 104 millimeter. And the blood which carry deoxygenated contain very less amount of pressure of oxygen. So therefore, this will move from, that is a 104 to 40 millimeter of mercury. That is from high pressure to a low pressure. Similarly, in blood, when it will get oxygen, it will go around 95, but tissues, they contain very less oxygen, so it will move from a blood to a tissues. In the same way, tissues, by using the oxygen, it will release the CO2, so the CO2 will diffuse from tissue to blood. So when it will take, it will become around 45, and this 45, that is, will move towards the alveoli because it is contain a low carbon dioxide. So exchange of oxygen and CO2 takes place in the pressure gradient by simple diffusion. So here pressure contributed by an individual gas in a mixture of gases is called as partial pressure of that particular gas. So it can be represented by PO2 or PPO2, that is partial pressure of oxygen, and PPCO2, partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So if you now consider here, this is the alveoli, and from alveoli, see the concentration of PO2 and PCO2 compared to these veins. So therefore, here in alveoli, the oxygen pressure is very high compared to the deoxygenated blood. Here it is 40 millimeter. So therefore, it will move here. And in a tissues, if you consider PCO2 is 45 compared to here in the oxygenated, it is 40. So it will move from a tissue to a blood capillaries. So diffusion of oxygen, that is partial pressure of oxygen alveolar air, is around 104 millimeter of mercury, and PO2 in venous blood is 40. So therefore, oxygen diffused from alveolar to, that is, venous blood. Diffusion of CO2 in venous blood, it is 45 millimeter of mercury compared to the alveolar air, that is 40, very less. So therefore, CO2 diffuse from the alveolar, that is from venous blood to the alveoli. So respiratory membrane, the solubility of carbon dioxide is 20 to 25 times higher than that of oxygen. So carbon dioxide diffused through the membrane per unit area is higher than oxygen. So respiratory membrane of human beings is made up of 3 layers: thin squamous epithelium of the alveoli, endothelium of alveolar capillaries, and in between these two, so there is a basement membrane. If you see here, So this is a single layer of alveolar, one side thick. And here, this is the blood capillary wall. And in between, you can see the yellow color structure, a basement membrane. So here, oxygen will diffuse through this membrane. The thickness is around 0.2 nanometer. And CO2 is diffused from blood capillary to the alveoli. Now, how the transport of gases takes place after the exchange of gases. So there are two gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide. So first, transport of oxygen. Around 97% of oxygen is transported by red blood corpuscles in the form of oxyhemoglobin. And around 3% is in the form of dissolved form through the plasma. Now, how that major amount of oxygen is transported? Oxygen bind with hemoglobin in a reversible form to form first oxyhemoglobin, Hb4O8 molecules. Each hemoglobin can bind maximum with 4 oxygen molecules. So, if you consider a healthy person, the amount of hemoglobin around 15 gram per 100 ml. So 1 gram of hemoglobin combine around 1.34 ml of oxygen. And the 100 ml of blood carries around 20 or 90.4 ml of oxygen. So it will deliver only 5 ml of oxygen to the tissue under normal physiological conditions. But when you do the exercise, it will go around 15 ml per 100 ml. So therefore, to provide more oxygen to our body, we have to do regular exercise. That is what the doctors advise. This is what we have to learn, adapt in our life. So during this association and dissociation, there is one curve called oxygen dissociation curve. So it is a sigmoid curve obtained when the percentage of saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen is plotted against the partial pressure of oxygen, PO2. So the curve, whatever we get obtained, that is called oxygen dissociation curve. So the condition favorable for association, a binding of hemoglobin, oxygen with the hemoglobin at a alveolar, high PO2, that is high partial pressure of oxygen, low CO2, low PCO2, low hydrogen ion concentration, and low temperature. So these 4 factors will help to bind the oxygen with hemoglobin. Now you can see here, this is a oxygen dissociation curve. X-axis PO2 millimeter of mercury from 0 to 100. On Y-axis oxyhemoglobin formation, that is percentage of saturation 0 to 100. So see, it will move right side, reduce the affinity, that is increase temperature, increase to 3 dpga, and increase hydrogen concentration, and okay, that is decrease oxygen in the tissue level, and it will move left side. So there is decreased temperature, decrease to 3 dpg, and decrease hydrogen concentration. Okay, so this is how it will move, either left side or right side. So this is one more graph, and here you can find out it will become a saturated, okay, not at 100, but before 100 only it is get fully saturated. So at 90 only. Okay. So here I have shown the conditions, that is moving right side or left side. One, that is high PCO2 in blood and low PCO2. Here high temperature and here low temperature. See how it is moving away from the normal. Okay. So conditions favorable for dissociation of oxyhemoglobin into hemoglobin and oxygen at tissue level. Low partial pressure of oxygen, high partial pressure of carbon dioxide, high hydrogen ion concentration, high temperature, and high 2,3 diphosphoglycerate, 2 dpg. So during this, there is a Bower's effect. Sipped Christian Bower in 1904. He explained, increase in carbon dioxide in the blood cause oxygen to be displaced from hemoglobin. And when that oxyhemoglobin reach to the tissue, in tissue there is a more carbon dioxide. So it will dissociate and oxygen will be delivered. So it is important factor for increasing oxygen release at a tissue level. So that is called Bohr's effect. Then how transport of CO2 takes place? 100 ml of blood transport around 4 ml of carbon dioxide. And it is transported in a 3 forms. Number 1, dissolved state. Number 2, as a carba-amino-hemoglobin in the RBC, by the RBC. And the third one is in the form of bicarbonate in RBC and plasma. So we'll see one by one. So dissolved form in plasma, 5 to 7% of CO2 is carried in dissolved form in the plasma. So 2.7 ml is around deoxygenated blood and 2.4 ml in oxygenated per 100 ml. That is the amount of CO2 in dissolved form. Then 20 to 30%, around 23% of CO2 is carried out in the RBC by binding with the free amino group of hemoglobin. And it will form a carba-amino-hemoglobin. So it will easily dissociate. So this is possible when PCO2 is high and PO2 is low at a tissue level. Then only it will bind. So more binding of CO2 occurs in this situation. And when the PCO2 is low and P oxygen is high, that is partial pressure at a alveoli, so it will dissociate. So dissociation of CO2 from carba-amino-hemoglobin takes place at the alveolar. So this is how, where the oxygen association takes place, there CO2 dissociation. And where the CO2 dissociation takes place, oxygen association, yeah, vice versa. So according to Haldane effect, so binding of oxygen with the hemoglobin will dissociate the carbon dioxide. So therefore, at a alveolar level, it will happen like this. So it will promote the transport of bicarbonates also. Now, the third way is CO2 transported in the form of a bicarbonate. 70% of CO2 is transported in the form of carbonic acid H2CO3 in the plasma. CO2 diffuse into the plasma, react with water and form carbonic acid, then which will dissociate into bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion. So this is catalyzed by an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase, Ca, which is present in the plasma membrane of RBC and even plasma also. See, this is a chemical reaction. CO2 water in presence of carbonic anhydrase, carbonic acid. So again, it will dissociate into bicarbonate and hydrogen. So this is reversible reaction. So this bicarbonic acid may bind with the potassium, and here you can see it will produce potassium bicarbonate. So here there is a chloride shift takes place. Yeah, it is also called Hamburger's phenomenon. The movement of chloride ions from plasma into the RBC, in response, the exit of bicarbonate from the RBC. So when from the RBC, bicarbonate will come outside, chlorine will enter to maintain the ionic balance. So that is called a chloride shift. So here how the exchange of CO2 takes place from the RBC into the alveoli, so that you can observe. So now how regulation of respiratory system takes place. So respiratory centers are present at the medulla oblongata, that is the part of brain. This is the real picture, and here you can see diagrammatic. So here there are a group of centers at a dorsal called dorsal respiratory group that will regulate inspiration. And here there is a ventral respiratory group that will regulate inspiration as well as expiration. And here is a switch point called as pneumotaxic center. And these are the pathways which are connected to our sternum, your ribs, or even diaphragm muscles. So medulla, respiratory rhythm centers for regulation of breathing. Dorsal Group cause inspiration, stimulate diaphragm and external intercostal muscles. Ventral, both inspiration and basically expiration, because generally expiration is a passive process with the internal muscles. The pneumotaxic center present at the pons region moderate the regulation. Okay, that is increase or decrease. So in our body, there are chemosensitive areas. Yeah, receptors are also there. So that adjacent to the rhyme center, yeah, rhythm center, are very sensitive to the amount of CO2 and hydrogen ion concentration. So these chemoreceptors are distributed all over the body, especially in aortic arch, a carotid artery that will recognize changes in the CO2 and hydrogen ion concentration. That will send the signal to our medulla. So mechanical control, smooth muscles in lung, that is called hearing barrier reflex, and chemical control of breathing, that is chemoreceptors located in carotid arteries and thorax, which are stimulated by decreased PO2, that is also called hypoxia, increased ion concentration hydrogen, that is metabolic acidosis, and increased PCO2, that is respiratory acidosis. So they will stimulate these chemoreceptors. Now we'll come to the common disorders in respiratory system. Asthma is a difficulty in breathing, causing the wheezing during the breathing due to inflammation of the bronchi and bronchioles. Emphysema, another chronic disorder in which alveolar walls are get damaged. So due to that, the surface of our exchange will decrease, and it is generally common in the smokers, whether it is a bidi or cigarette. Bronchitis, that is swelling of bronchi, so result in secretion of excessive mucus, and that will block. Then pneumonia, that is infection by bacteria like Streptococcus pneumonia. Alveoli will get filled with the dead RBC and the mucus. So nowadays you might have heard during this COVID-19, the person suffering from a pneumonia are under extreme danger condition. Diphtheria, another bacteria, that is Corynebacterium diphtheria. No vaccine is there for that. Then rhinitis, acute inflammation of a mucous membrane. Common cold, rhinovirus, that is virus. Generally sneezing and cough are the main symptoms. Then SARS, that is severe acute respiratory syndrome. Again, the present COVID-19 is the form of this one. So therefore, it is also human coronavirus. Okay. Then there are certain conditions occur in our body, depends upon the situation of the respiratory system. Apnea, that is true breathing, person is normal. Apnea, no breathing at all. Anoxia, absence of oxygen. Hypoxia, oxygen shortage at a tissue level. Asphyxia, increased CO2 due to drowning, choking, or even poisonous gas. Dyspnea, that is painful breathing. Okay. See, eupnea, apnea, dyspnea. Then acapnea, that is absence of CO2 at a blood level. So these words just remember. Then occupational respiratory disorder. So the person who they due to work conditions, so these diseases are occur. Grinding or stone breaking or spinning mill. Long exposure can give rise to inflammation leading of fibrosis, that is proliferation of fibrous tissue, and thus causing the serious lung damage. For example, due to silica dust, silicosis, asbestos dust, asbestosis, siderosis, that is iron dust, cotonosis, that is cotton dust, like that, etc. Now, so we have certain concept test. So you what to do, you pause the video, read the all choices, write the answer, and then play video to check your answer. Incidence of emphysema, a respiratory disorder, is high in cigarette smokers. In such cases, what will happen? Write your answer. Yes. So the correct answer is B. Alveolar walls are found damaged. One more. Oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve will show a right shift in case of. Again, pause the video, write the answer, check it. Yes, the correct answer is again B, that is high partial pressure of oxygen. Okay, friends, thank you for watching this my video on my YouTube channel. So don't forget to subscribe and give like button and keep watching my channel for all videos related to CBSE and State Board for 11 and 12 class. So thank you one and all. Have a nice day.